My name is Emily Harper, and I'm 27 years old, a junior accountant living in Chicago. I've always been the quiet one, the person who keeps her head down, crunches numbers, and avoids office drama. I believed hard work and honesty would get me ahead, no matter how cutthroat the corporate world could be. But then I stumbled across something that changed everything. My boss, Richard Grayson, the CFO of Pinnacle Solutions, was stealing millions from the company. He thought he was untouchable, hiding his scam behind fake contracts and a charming smile. He was wrong, because I wasn't just another number cruncher. I was the one who brought him down and took his job in the process. This is the story of how I turn the tables on a greedy executive and prove that justice can come from the most unexpected places. It all began in the spring of 2023, when I landed my dream job at Pinnacle Solutions, a mid-sized tech firm in downtown Chicago. The company developed software for small businesses, and it had a reputation for innovation and a tight-knit culture. I'd spent years grinding through accounting classes, internships, and late nights studying for my CPA exam, so getting hired as a junior accountant felt like a victory. The pay was decent, $65,000 a year, enough to cover my rent and student loans. And the office was a sleek, open-plan space with glass walls, free coffee, and a view of Lake Michigan. I was thrilled to be there, ready to prove myself. My department, finance, was led by Richard Grayson, the chief financial officer. Richard was in his late 40s, tall, with slicked back hair and a wardrobe of tailored suits. He had a reputation as a financial genius, someone who'd turned Pinnacle's struggling budget into a profit machine. At company meetings, he'd flash a megawatt smile, toss around buzzwords like synergy and growth hacking, and charm everyone from interns to the CEO. The board loved him, the staff admired him, and I was no exception. At first, I thought working under Richard would be a masterclass in corporate finance. I couldn't have been more wrong. My role was straightforward: reconcile accounts, track expenses, and prepare reports for the finance team. I worked alongside three other accountants: Mark, a laid-back guy in his 30s, Priya, a meticulous senior accountant, and Lisa, a part-time contractor. We reported to Richard, who'd breeze into our cubicles every few days, dropping vague instructions like double-check the Q2 numbers or make sure the vendors are happy. He was always busy, always on calls, always jetting off to client meetings in Miami or Vegas. I didn't think much of it. Executives live in a different world, right? The first hint of trouble came about 3 months into my job, in June 2023. I was reconciling the department's quarterly budget, a routine task that involved matching invoices to payments. Pinnacle's finance budget was hefty, $10 million annually, covering software licenses, consulting fees, and vendor contracts. As I sifted through the records, I noticed a vendor I'd never seen before: Apex Consulting Group. According to the ledger, Apex had been paid $500,000 in Q1 for strategic advisory services. The amount raised my eyebrows. $500,000 for consulting was steep, even for a company like Pinnacle. I checked the vendor database, expecting to find Apex's contact info, tax ID, or contract details. Nothing. Just a P.O. box in Delaware and a generic email address. I cross-referenced the invoices, and they were bare bones. No itemized services, no project codes, just consulting fees and Richard's signature approving the payment. It felt off, but I figured I was missing something. Richard was the CFO after all. He wouldn't sign off on a $500,000 payment without due diligence, right? I mentioned it to Priya during lunch, keeping my tone casual. Hey, have you worked with Apex Consulting before? Their invoices are kind of vague. Priya frowned, stirring her coffee. Apex? I don't think so. Richard handles those contracts himself. Said it's executive level stuff? Her tone was neutral, but I caught a flicker of unease in her eyes. I let it drop, not wanting to seem like the new kid stirring up trouble. But the Apex payment stuck with me, like a splinter I couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to the budget. I noticed more oddities. Payments to Apex Consulting appeared every quarter, ranging from $300,000 to $700,000, always approved by Richard. By my rough estimate, Pinnacle had paid Apex over $2 million in the past year alone. I also found smaller, but equally suspicious transactions. $50,000 to a company called Blue Horizon for market research, $80,000 to Triton Analytics for data services. Like Apex, these vendors had no digital footprint, no websites, no LinkedIn profiles, just P.O. boxes and Richard's signature. By August, my curiosity had turned into obsession. I couldn't focus on routine tasks without wondering how much money was slipping through the cracks. I decided to dig deeper, but I had to be careful. Richard was powerful, and if he was stealing, he'd cover his tracks. Accusing a CFO without proof would be career suicide, especially for a junior accountant with 3 months on the job. I needed evidence. Hard, undeniable evidence. I started small, working late to avoid suspicion. Pinnacle's accounting software, NetSuite, tracked every transaction, but only senior staff like Richard had full access. As a junior accountant, I could view ledgers and invoices, but not bank records or wire transfers. I began downloading PDFs of every Apex invoice, saving them to a password-protected folder on my personal laptop. I also took screenshots of the vendor database, noting the lack of details for Apex, Blue Horizon, and Triton. Each invoice was signed by Richard, often with a handwritten note, urgent, process immediately. Next, I checked the company's public filings. Pinnacle was privately held, but it published annual reports for investors. The 2022 report listed $8 million in consulting expenses, a huge jump from $3 million in 2021. The increase aligned with Apex's payments, but the report didn't name specific vendors. I cross-referenced the dates. Apex invoices started appearing shortly after Richard became CFO in 2021. It was circumstantial, but it strengthened my hunch. To get more context, I approached Mark, the laid-back accountant, during a coffee break. "Hey Mark, you ever deal with Apex Consulting?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He shrugged, barely looking up from his phone. "Nah, that's Richard's pet project. He says there's some high-end firm in Delaware." "Why?" I mumbled something about invoice formats and changed the subject. Mark's nonchalance told me he hadn't noticed anything, but his mention of Delaware was a clue. Delaware was notorious for shell companies, businesses set up to hide ownership. I spent my evenings researching Apex Consulting. A Google search turned up nothing, but a deep dive on the Delaware Secretary of State's website revealed a registration for Apex Consulting Group, incorporated in 2021. The listed agent was a generic law firm and the owner's name was redacted. Standard for Delaware LLCs. Blue Horizon and Triton followed the same pattern. Registered in Delaware. No public owners. No real presence. It was like chasing ghosts. Then came a breakthrough. One night, while combing through NetSuite, I found an old email thread attached to an Apex invoice. It was a conversation between Richard and someone named Jay Carter at Apex, discussing a $400,000 payment. The email was brief, confirming transfer to the usual account. Details as discussed. Richard's reply was even shorter. Done. Keep it quiet. My heart raced. The usual account? Keep it quiet? This wasn't how legitimate vendors talked. I saved the email as a PDF, my hands shaking. It wasn't proof of theft, but it was the first crack in Richard's armor. By September, I had a growing dossier. 20 Apex invoices, screenshots of shady vendors, the Delaware registrations, and the cryptic email. But I needed more. Something that tied Richard directly to the money. I couldn't access bank records, but I could track payment patterns. I noticed Apex payments were always wired to the same bank. First Coastal Trust, a small institution in Miami. Blue Horizon and Triton used the same bank. It was unusual. Most vendors used major banks like Chase or Wells Fargo. Why was Richard funneling millions to an obscure Miami bank? I took a risk and confided in Priya, the senior accountant. She was sharp, detail-oriented, and had been at Pinnacle for 5 years. If anyone knew something, it was her. I waited until we were alone in the break room, then showed her a printout of an Apex invoice. Priya, have you seen this? It's $500,000 for consulting. But there's no contract, no details. And it's not just Apex. There's Blue Horizon, Triton, all signed by Richard. Her face tightened and she glanced at the door. Emily, be careful, she whispered. I've asked Richard about Apex before. He got defensive, said it's above my pay grade. I dropped it. She paused, then added, but you're right. It doesn't add up. Priya's caution confirmed my fears. Richard was hiding something big. She agreed to help, but only indirectly. She'd flag any Apex payments in NetSuite and forward them to me. Over the next month, we worked in secret. Priya found a bombshell, a wire transfer confirmation for $600,000 to Apex, with a memo line reading, Consulting RG Personal. RG. Richard Grayson. Personal. It was the closest thing to a smoking gun I'd seen. I saved the document, my pulse pounding. This wasn't just sloppy accounting, it was theft. To solidify the case, I needed external proof. I contacted a friend from my CPA program, Alex, who worked at a forensic accounting firm. I didn't share specifics, just asked how to trace shell companies. Alex suggested checking bank records, impossible without access, or hiring a private investigator. I couldn't afford a PI, but his advice gave me an idea: public records. I searched Miami-Dade County property records and found a listing for a $2.5 million condo purchased in 2022 by a Richard G. Grayson. The timing matched Apex's payments. Richard's salary was high, maybe $400,000 a year, but a $2.5 million condo, plus his Lakeview penthouse in Chicago, seemed out of reach unless he had another income stream. I also dug into social media. Richard's Instagram was private, but his LinkedIn showed frequent trips to Miami, where First Coastal Trust was located. A public Facebook post from a Miami yacht club showed him posing on a boat in 2022, captioned, "Living the Dream." The boat, a 40-foot Sunseeker, cost at least $500,000. For a CFO, it wasn't impossible, but combined with the condo, the vendors, and the email, it painted a damning picture. By October, I had enough evidence to act. $2.3 million in questionable payments to Apex, Blue Horizon, and Triton, the RG personal wire transfer, Delaware registrations, the email with "Keep It Quiet," and Richard's lavish lifestyle. I estimated he'd stolen at least $3 million over 2 years, funneling it through fake vendors to his personal accounts. But exposing him wasn't enough. I needed to protect myself and ensure he faced consequences. I considered going to the police or the SEC, but Pinnacle was private, and external investigations could take years. Instead, I decided to take the evidence to the board of directors. Pinnacle's board included 5 members: the CEO, Margaret Chen, 2 investors, a retired tech executive, and an independent auditor. Margaret was approachable but loyal to Richard, so I'd need airtight proof to convince her. The auditor, Susan Patel, was my best bet. She had a reputation for integrity and no personal ties to Richard. I spent a week preparing a report. It was 15 pages long with charts, invoices, screenshots, and a timeline of Apex payments. I summarized the evidence. $2.3 million paid to 3 vendors with no contracts or services. Delaware shell companies linked to the vendors, the RG personal wire transfer, and Richard's Miami condo. The email with, "Keep it quiet." I kept the tone professional, avoiding accusations of theft, and sticking to terms like financial irregularities. I also included a cover letter, requesting a confidential meeting with Susan Patel. To protect myself, I made backups of everything: cloud storage, a USB drive, and a hard copy locked in my apartment. I told Priya my plan, and she agreed to back me up if the board questioned her. I also emailed Alex, my CPA friend, a summary of the evidence, asking him to hold on to it in case something went wrong. If Richard retaliated, I'd have insurance. On October 15th, I emailed Susan Patel, attaching the report and requesting a meeting. I kept it vague. I've identified significant discrepancies in the finance budget and need to discuss them confidentially. Susan replied within hours, scheduling a meeting for the following Monday at a neutral location, a coffee shop near the office. I barely slept that weekend, my mind racing with what ifs. What if Susan dismissed me? What if Richard found out? But I'd come too far to back down. The meeting with Susan was nerve-wracking. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed with a no-nonsense demeanor. I handed her a printed copy of the report and walked her through the evidence, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. These payments to Apex, Blue Horizon, and Triton, over $2 million, have no supporting documents, I said. They're all approved by Richard, and the wire transfer says RG Personal. I believe he's diverting company funds. Susan listened silently, flipping through the pages. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "This is serious, Emily. If true, it's catastrophic. I need to verify this independently." Susan promised to keep my name out of it for now. She hired an external forensic accounting firm to audit the finance department, framing it as a routine compliance check to avoid tipping off Richard. The audit took 2 weeks, and I was a wreck, jumping every time Richard walked by my cubicle. He seemed oblivious, still flashing his smile and bragging about a new car, a Tesla Model X, worth $120,000. Priya kept me sane, slipping me updates when she could. "The auditors are digging deep," she whispered one day. "They're asking for bank records." On November 3rd, the board called an emergency meeting. Richard was summoned, along with the finance team. I wasn't invited, but Priya texted me updates. The auditors had traced the Apex payments to a First Coastal Trust account in Richard's name. Blue Horizon and Triton were linked to the same account, confirming $3.2 million in fraudulent transfers. The J. Carter from the email was a former colleague of Richard's, acting as a middleman for the shell companies. The board confronted Richard with the evidence, and he crumbled. He tried to spin a story about investment opportunities, but the paper trail was undeniable. By the end of the day, Richard was fired, escorted out by security. The board issued a statement to staff, citing financial misconduct, but sparing the details. The fallout was swift. Pinnacle's legal team filed a civil suit against Richard to recover the stolen funds. The SEC launched an investigation, and rumors swirled about criminal charges. Richard's condo and yacht were seized as part of the lawsuit, and his reputation was shredded. A Crain's Chicago business article called him the CFO, who thought he could outsmart the books. He moved to Florida, reportedly living off savings while fighting the lawsuits. I never heard from him again, and I didn't care to. The board didn't name me publicly, but Susan Patel ensured I got credit internally. At a company-wide meeting, Margaret Chen announced a new CFO. Me. I was stunned. I'd expected a pat on the back, maybe a raise, but not Richard's job. At 27, I was young for the role, but Susan argued I'd proven my integrity and skill. My salary jumped to $250,000, and I got Richard's corner office, complete with the Lake Michigan view. Priya was promoted to my old role, and we became a powerhouse team, cleaning up the finance department and implementing new controls to prevent fraud. The experience changed me. I'd always been cautious, afraid to rock the boat. But exposing Richard taught me that silence enables corruption. I started mentoring junior staff, encouraging them to speak up when something felt wrong. Pinnacle's culture shifted too. Less hero worship, more transparency. The board even launched an anonymous tip line, inspired by my report. Looking back, I didn't set out to take Richard's job. I just wanted the truth to come out. He thought he could steal millions, hide behind his title, and never face consequences. He didn't count on a junior accountant with a knack for numbers and a refusal to stay quiet. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, served cold and calculated, right down to the last decimal point. Thanks for listening to this tale of workplace justice. Have you ever had a boss who crossed the line? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories where the little guy wins. Until next time, keep your eyes on the numbers and never let a scam slide.